name is Meira Blaustein. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Woodstock Film Festival. So nice to see you here. Thank you for joining. This is a part of our panel series. We have had a couple of panels yesterday. We're having 4 panels today. This is the 3rd one, and a few more tomorrow. I hope you'll go on our website, see what other panels we have, and come and join us, please, because we would love to have you. But this panel is actually very close to my heart. The Woodstock Film Festival and New York Women in Film and Television has had a relationship now for nearly 20 years in one way or another. And also the festival itself has always had emphasis on women filmmakers. We have a program called Spotlight on Women in Film and Media. It's something that is close to my heart and something that I think every festival should be doing these days. So today we have a panel that was curated and presented, co-presented rather, by NYWIT, New York Women in Film and Television. And to start the conversation is their executive director, Cynthia Lopez. And 2 of our panelists are here. The other one, I think, is on her way. So I'm just going to invite Melissa and Yoruba, if you guys can join us. Melissa Leah and Yoruba Ricken. And the last panelist, Julia Baca, we hope is on her way. And when she gets here, she will just join you. So without further ado, Cynthia, take it away. Yoruba, sit here. Yeah. Thank you, ladies.
Great. How are we doing?
Well,
Fantastic. I love being at the Woodstock Film Festival, even though my GPS keeps on saying, you have arrived. You have arrived, when I have not arrived. And I just said, one of our colleagues on the panel said, GPS, it's the GPS, it's not your GPS, it's the GPS, and I think that's absolutely true. So the first thing I say to everyone, because we'll be speaking about censorship, is that we have to take a deep breath. And I mean this for myself, but for everyone. Every time I wake up in the morning and I see what's happening in the news, I have to take a deep breath. And I know this is recording, so I won't use the curse words that I normally use. But we do have to hold on to ourselves with what's happening, I believe, in this country at this time, at this moment. But the exciting news is, when I was driving up to the Woodstock Film Festival, our creatives are making movies in spite of it. Our creatives, our filmmakers, our distributors, people who work in this industry, who really have important things to say, are still doing that. And so for that, and for my distinguished panel, please give a round of applause to these ladies. So I just want to start by saying, throughout history, creators have faced the challenge of industry and government censorship, with authorities attempting to control the narratives and the themes presented on screen. This is not something new, right? Despite these restrictions, many filmmakers have bravely pushed the boundaries of artistic expression, using their work to highlight social and political issues and to advocate for freedom of speech. Storytellers have subverted such restrictions using techniques like metaphor or allegory, contributing to the evolution of the media and preserving our culture and heritage. Today's panel will bring together documentary makers that are industry leaders to discuss the complex issues that we face today, both in the societal context, the historical context, and our government. So first, I would like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little about your work in general.
Sure, hi. My name is Yoruba Richen. It's great to see you guys out here. Thank you for coming. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I make films about generally social issue films, and I'm driven to do this kind of work because when I found documentary film, when I found myself in it and making my first video, it just clicked. It brought together all the things that for me as a person in terms of researching and politics and meeting people and telling a story. And so I feel really lucky that I'm able to do this work. I'm also a professor at the Newmark Graduate School of Journalism, where I started the documentary program there. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Melissa Leo. I am an actor. I've been working for maybe 40 years. I'm not completely sure. My face shows up in my work, so that's why they do all that. I think for Yorba, we should all go. I think that mostly what I'll have to contribute to this is my experience as an actor. That's all I have to contribute to anything that I ever do, including the work that I do. Show up as the actor. I'm not the screenwriter, I'm not the producer, I'm not inventing the stories. I'm trying to find a way to play the woman, generally speaking, that I'm being asked to play in a truthful way. And when the character I'm being asked to play is 10 years older than the several children the character has, it becomes a little complicated. So I think it's that end, the sort of ageism and so on that I experience as an actor is what I have to contribute to the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. We did have that Kim Schneider could not attend the panel. In full disclosure, she was accepted to the Rome Film Festival for her film, The Librarians. And so she is She is in Rome as we speak. She called me very flustered to say, I have the second invitation and it's the same time and what do I do and what do I do? And I said, okay. Italy, New York, Italy, Woodstock. I said, where are you going? We will represent you on the panel. So we have a clip, 2 clips from her. But definitely if you get accepted for the first time ever to the Rome Film Festival, how can you say no, right? So for the tech person that I can't see that's back there that's helping me, okay, I see the hands, the glowing hands. I would like to start with Kim's statement, not her press clip, but her statement addressing the crowd.
Hi, I'm Kim Snyder, and I'm the director and one of the producers on The Librarians. I'm so sorry I can't be there in Woodstock, but admittedly, I am happy to be here at the Rome Film Festival. Our film, The Librarians, started 4 years ago in a little place called Granbury, Texas, where we started to chronicle an attack on our librarians that then moved from Texas to a national story. And this began in the fall of 21 after the release of something called the Krause List, where a state senator had 850 books on a list that school libraries should remove from their shelves. At that time, a group of librarians calling themselves the Freedom Fighters, with an R-E-A-D in freedom, organized and began to be in touch with libraries around Texas and beyond, to speak out and organize. So at that time, there was a lot of shock and trauma, and I've been collaborating with them over these 4 years to expose and to empower through this story of their heroic efforts to be on the front lines and the firewall to protecting our democracy. As I travel with this and we see how this attack on our freedom of expression has just moved from concentric circles, it would be the elephant in the room not to address a lot of thoughts and feelings I've been having about the censorship in our own industry that we talk a lot about the chilling effect with the librarians and what books they may have just chosen or be choosing now to keep off the shelves out of self-protection. And I feel that's definitely happening in our documentary space for all kinds of obvious reasons. And I am constantly checking myself to ask that question. Am I self-censoring? Am I not going forth with stories that I feel need to be told in this historic time because of fear? Like a lot of people, it's that mantra of not wanting to operate out of a place of fear. But I really feel that the answer is not only the power that we have collectively in our nonfiction storytelling space is so paramount right now, but I also feel community is everything. Our community of documentary filmmakers is so essential right now. And standing together as artists, as filmmakers, in a place where we don't succumb to fear and capitulation. So I'm proud to be amongst everyone who's virtually sitting around me and their works, and hope that we can carry on through this dark time.
Well, I just wanted to bring two quotes to the fore while we have our additional speaker. Welcome. Hi. Hi. There's one quote that I love that said, "You don't have to burn books to destroy a culture. Just get people to stop reading them." And that is Ray Bradbury, the author of Fahrenheit 451. There's another quote of someone who I love. "It's not just books under fire now that worry me," she said. "It is books that will never be written that are really a problem. The books that will never be. And it's all due to the fear of censorship. As always, the ones who lose are the young readers who will not have access to these important works." Judy Blume. And then finally, I do want to mention, Joe Cohen of the organization Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression said, "We are seeing tremendous attacks on our First Amendment freedoms across the country now, at all levels of government. Censorship is proliferating and it's deeply troubling," says Joe Cohen. "It is something that we need to look at seriously as the top issue in our country at this time." And he's with the Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression. So just little quotes, things, that we can ponder on. But I do want to welcome our guest and have you introduce yourself and a little bit about your work.
Thank you so much, and my apologies for being late. My name is Julia Basha. I am a documentary filmmaker. I've been doing my work through a nonprofit media organization called Just Vision for 22 years now, and I focus my work on undocumented stories from Israel and Palestine and related ones in the United States.
So I'd like to start by you pulling up your clip and telling us a little bit about sort of the genesis of the film title, and then we'll talk more about it after. But if you could cue up the clip.
Yes. So we're going to watch a clip from my film, The Cost of Inheritance, which is about the quest for reparations in this country. And I started making this film in 2021 at a time when the issue of reparations had really come to the national forefront. And I was approached by a producer who had been part of this network of universities who came together to look at this issue of reparations, and one of the things they wanted to do was make a film. And I, of course, was immediately interested, largely because the nature of the conversation had changed. I remember when I was a kid, you said reparations, you were considered a crazy person. And then now suddenly, not suddenly, I mean after, as the film documents many hundreds of years, we had the Democratic, candidates saying that they supported HR, the bill to study reparations. We had Ta-Nehisi Coates in the congressional, in front of the Congress, making the case for reparations. And I really wanted to document how that had shifted, and people who were actively descendants of slave owners and slaves working to find repair. So that's how we started. And what's crazy is that, of course, now we're in a different administration, and we're facing a backlash on so many issues and things. But I will say, what I discovered in making this film is that there's so many efforts around the country of Black people and white people working together, not comfortably a lot of times, but to face history and to look for what reparative justice is. And that's not going away despite any administration that we have, so.
So please run the clip for Inheritance.
My mother had died. I was opening up a whole bunch of boxes. Each box was like a time capsule. I found a little black book, and I started paging through, and I realized this is a plantation, and here's a list of enslaved people. They're listed by name, age, and value. Cornelius, age 8, $500. John, age 20, $1,100. Jack, 15, 9.
I have known that my ancestors were enslavers since as long as I can remember. What really struck me was seeing names.
Tom, 13, $700. July, age 10, $600.
We recognize our lineage as a generational trust,
Jake,
as inheritance.
age 10, $600.
And the real dilemma posed by reparations is just that,
Joe P,
a dilemma
24,
of inheritance.
$1,200. Jane,
By the 1900, there was something like 1 million Black people who had actually been slaves, who were still around. If the government had given reparations to those small number of people, perhaps the question would not have come back to bite them later on, that nothing had been done.
Now, when we come to Washington, we're coming to get our check.
We speak the names of those who came before us. Barada,
Ashe,
Bars,
Ashe,
Black Love, Land.
The matter of reparations is one of making amends, but it is also a question of citizenship.
Seeing those names, it humanized it for me. Why didn't somebody do something more to stop this within the family?
there are 44 souls listed in this ledger. If our family enslaved others, then I've got some repair work I've got to do.
So tell us a little bit, how did you find out about this specific story?
So, we had the fortunate, as I said, these group of universities all across the country got together for a 3-year study to look at the issue of reparations. And they had done a lot of the groundwork of finding these, people. I think they documented something like, we eventually documented or found out there was something like 400 efforts, reparative efforts around the country that were happening at the time. But I knew that I wanted to tell this story of following what people were doing, right? Like could we follow these efforts as it was happening, as it was, taking place, and so much was happening. One of the stories that we found, the two women who you see at the beginning, they're each, looking at their own family, working with descendants of slaves to find reparative effort, to find reparative efforts. But we also tell the story of Georgetown. Georgetown it became public that they had slaves, that they owned slaves in, it was like 1828. They made a big sale of their slaves that they owned, and it saved Georgetown, actually. It saved the university and many other universities that, that the Catholic Church owned. And they came public with it, and the descendants of those slaves came and demanded that they do something, that they, make repair. And so Georgetown eventually has committed to a huge fund. They really have a commitment of something like $30 billion to make efforts to, give money back to the descendants, to create, do a whole creation of education, all of that. So we looked at the institutional, we looked at these families working together, and it was also very important for me to have white people be the ones who were being active about it. I wanted this to speak to white people in particular, because we talk about censorship. Our history has always been censored for the most part. So we know, this is a terrible time, but many of us have experienced this, from the beginning and in telling our stories. So I really wanted the film to speak to white people, and I found these amazing women who were leading these efforts, and who are so committed, and I'm so grateful that they were in the film. Should we go into the part how this is part of the reason why PBS was defunded? So this film was released in 2023, and April 14th, my birthday of this year, the White House released put out a press release saying, this is the kind of, the title was PBS has been grifting you, grifting the taxpayer, and it said, this is the kind of trash PBS produces, and mine was like the second link on the press release. And then of course, a few months later, PBS has been defunded. And I will just say that as many folks here know, it's a huge, horrible loss. And it's so dismissive of the American people. That's really what just, these people, these are Americans who are, doing this work, and it's just so dismissive, of course. And these are the kinds of stories that, PBS, as you know, Cynthia was on my first film that I made about South Africa and land reform. These are the kinds of stories that commercial places, are not necessarily going to take. And obviously we have to find different models and all of that, but that's the censorship that I see, censoring these stories that are so vital to understanding who we are as a people.
Absolutely, and what she's referring to is in my previous life, I used to work for a series called POV, American Documentary POV. So I was there for 14 years, and we really prided ourselves in selecting films that really pushed the boundaries on documentaries and said things that needed to be said, actually. And so I was there 14 years, and sort of 8 of the years I was co-executive producer. But these stories are pivotal to the fabric. I always think, I've always wanted to learn how to do quilts, right, when I was a kid. But I don't have the patience to wait to finish the quilt. So in my house, I have all these little patches, right? And I always think, this is why I work with filmmakers, because they finish the stuff they start, and they do it really well. And what I have to do is put the bigger quilt together of all these different filmmakers with all these ideas and creativities to keep showing on PBS a different patch of that quilt, right? When I think about what PBS is going through now, again, without getting too specific, I want to speak to the other panelists, but I do believe that, like with every, I have to say, when I was looking at your film, I just kept on thinking, gosh, I went to South Africa right after Nelson Mandela was released a year later, and I was asked to speak at a very big forum. And at the time, I was with an organization that is called Deep Dish TV Network. And absolutely, our folks know Deep Dish. And Dee Dee Halleck, who's the founder, she's done incredible work, specifically around this topic of freedom of expression. And many years ago in the 90s, she worked on a series that was called Behind Censorship. But anyway, I was in South Africa, and I remember learning that the first thing the South African government did was they had Channel 1 was for whites and Channel 2 was for blacks. And the rigorous sort of censorship that went on with the programming on Channel 2 was unbelievable. And when we look at what they first did, which was ensure that there would be no public television in South Africa. So from my perspective, we are just seeing old strategies being used again to censor what it is we are doing, right? But at the same token, this festival and all the work that's going on is counter to that. And I do think that with PBS, we have to rethink what will be the establishment of the new public mediums with an S, because it might not be just one system, it might be several systems. But the biggest loss is that for so many years, that system was developed to give voice to diversity, to give voice to people who didn't traditionally have it on broadcast. So to see that taken away is a huge, huge loss for us. And so we need to look to those leaders and to see how we reconfigure. The last thing I would say, just in terms of resistance, right? Years ago, I worked for another organization that was called Libraries for the Future. And we advocated for public libraries, and I started working in that organization when there was a shift. There were 19,000 libraries in this country, and the extremists were like, we don't need public libraries, that's not necessary. We have access to digital, et cetera, et cetera. And Libraries for the Future advocated for, we need public libraries always, and we need to not shut them down. We need to figure out public-private partnerships so that we can, in fact, literacy is the largest barrier to economic development in people's lives. And so when I think about what's happening in public television, I have to say, I do not believe that every single public television will go away. I believe similarly to what happened to public libraries, there'll be a retrenchment of public television stations. But the difficulty is that it is the richer ones that will survive. It is not the local ones that really have community spirit, if you will, and really respond to community needs that may not survive. So we really need to look at that. I did want to ask you, when the White House, where were you, when the White House says something negative about your project, it's very startling, right? Where were you, how did you deal with that?
Well, we were, it was a text to me, like from my producers, it was my birthday, so I was, kind of distracted. But, it's a badge of honor, right? It's a badge of honor. I mean, these, I'm like, okay, I hope more people watch it then, right? What else are you gonna do?
Right.
I hope more people watch the film. It is still available. You can, on the YouTube channel on America Reframed, which was one of the first things that they shut down, because can't reframe America, right? Like, can't actually, but it is still available. I just checked actually. But yeah, I mean, what do? You keep going, and that's what we're doing. We're the community of filmmakers, we keep going, we keep making the work, and we figure out how to get it out there. As I said, and I'm sure I see Julia nodding, like some stories have been censored forever. So we have to figure out, we're always fighting to tell our stories, and we'll continue, that's not gonna go away.
Absolutely. So we'll turn to Julia a second, because it's my understanding, Melissa, you don't have a clip to share.
I have no clip.
No clip, so we'll come back to you. But Julia, could you frame the clip that we're about to see?
Sure. So the clip is from my last documentary called Boycott. And Boycott tells the stories of 3 Americans from different political and socio-economic background that challenged a law that said that in order to keep their public jobs, they had to sign a pledge that they would not boycott Israel for Palestinian human rights. When they refused, they lost their jobs, and then they sued. And so the film follows their 3 journeys in their lawsuits. And the clip that we're gonna watch is Vince Warren, who is the executive director of the Center for Constitutional Rights, as he is describing the historical importance of boycotts in social justice movements.
As long as I am president of the Alabama Public Service Commission, I'm going to see that our segregation laws are upheld.
When we think about what influence we have over our government in America, there are only a couple of ways that we can do that. One is by voting. Another way is withdrawing my time and my labor and my money until things change.
Didn't feel that I was being treated as a human being. I refused to give up this seat. I said no.
And if we think about 1955 and the Montgomery boycott of the buses, that is a key example. Black people decided we're going to walk to work. Why should we be paying money to be discriminated and to be marginalized that way? It doesn't make sense.
The long-awaited mandate from the United States Supreme Court concerning bus segregation came to Montgomery. The year-old protest against city buses is officially called off, and the Negro citizens of Montgomery are urged to return to the buses tomorrow morning on a non-segregated basis.
When I was in college, one of the big issues that I was involved in was boycott and divestment from apartheid South Africa. And if we look back at that period of time, some of the most active places where that was happening were on college campuses, including my own. And the idea there was that it was up to the students to put pressure on the administration of the school to not have investments in companies that were essentially furthering and enabling the horrible racist apartheid regime in South Africa.
God down on Monday!
Looking back on that period, from a number of years, most people would say it was not only the right thing to do, it was one of the high points of American engagement in the question of justice.
We have not forgotten that it was the masses of the people of the United States of America who supported us when we were all alone.
And so what becomes really deeply important is for people to be able to say, I am going to be active in the political discussion by withdrawing my time and my labor and my money until things change. And to have a proliferation of bills that are criminalizing or penalizing that is really, really troubling and problematic.
So the film, tracks the specific stories of these three Americans who are challenging those boycott bills, and also shows two things that I think are relevant for the conversation we're having. One is that the boycott laws are now being extended to be templates that are preventing Americans from boycotting not only for Palestinian human rights, but for environmental rights, for issues of equality across discriminated groups of people. And that those laws exist in now 38 different states in America. A version of it exists in New York, a version of it exists in California. And the reason why is because these laws were largely passed with bipartisan support. And that's something that can feel maybe uncomfortable to admit and recognize, but I think it's really important if we're gonna come to terms with how we ended up where we are today in an authoritarian, increasingly authoritarian country that has used, in many ways, the Palestinian issue as an entry point for significantly censoring organizers and activists. We certainly saw that on campus, Palestinian advocates, students who were crushed, who have been doxxed, who have lost their jobs, and an administration now that has used that space to really hold universities hostage to their other issues that they care about, which maybe the Democratic Party didn't want to take that direction, but we unfortunately opened the gates for a lot of what we're seeing today.
Now, Julia, tell us a little bit about why it's such an inspirational film. Everyone should see the whole film. It is really a lesson that every American should take watching this film. How did you get involved with that specific issue? It's so specific.
Yeah. So I'm Brazilian, and I'm just need to do a short version of this story, but when I was a student actually at Columbia University for my undergraduate, and September 11 happened while I was there, which led me to become very interested in Middle Eastern issues. And I moved to the Middle East soon after graduating and met an Egyptian-American filmmaker called Jihain Najim, with whom I worked on for the film Control Room. And shortly after that, I met an Israeli filmmaker that was working on a film called Encounter Point. And I thought I was gonna make one film with her in Israel and Palestine, and then move on and keep doing other things. But Ronit, it's her name, had a really interesting vision that resonated with me for using documentary films really as a tool for organizing and social change, and creating an infrastructure that would allow for an issue that can face a lot of censorship and has always faced a lot of censorship, to get distribution independently of the commercial or public viability of the project. I think one, I am a huge fan of PBS. I am devastated by what's happening, and PBS has also had challenges broadcasting and programming issues, films related to Palestine. And that there's a lot of reasons. It's not actually because of the people who work there, in my experience. The programmers and the executives all very much want to, but there's a lot of fear of what would happen if they did that based on their relationship with government funding. And so we had to very much build our own independent infrastructure of funding, of production, of distribution, which is what Just Vision is.
Can you, absolutely, can you cue up the second clip that you have? You have a very short second clip. Can you cue that up?
Yeah, so the very short second clip is Laura Friedman, who is the president of the Foundation for Middle East Peace, talking a little bit about the template, meaning how the anti-boycott laws have become an entryway for authoritarianism and all kinds of other issues.
You may not care about Israel-Palestine, but you should care if it's being used as a hook to legislate in your states and at the federal level against free speech. How many words would I have to change in this legislation to use it to condition contracts and thereby quash free speech of anyone who, say, supports Black Lives Matter or is involved in protesting for environmental reasons? And it's like 10 words. It's a template. Why people are not more worried about it is just baffling.
And just quickly to put in context, that interview was done in 2019. We were in production, and the template as such was still hypothetical at that time. By the time we locked picture on the film, these laws had actually started passing across the country. So it was really shocking to watch all of that happen in real time. And just to be living in the moment that we are today, where this issue, has really become an entryway that Trump has used to great success, unfortunately, and with a lot of cynicism to open more spaces for cracking down on dissent and free speech in America.
Congratulations. Well, before we turn to Kim Schneider's clip, the librarians, I did want to bring journalists to the table, right? Because if we look at this clip, it just makes sense. So journalists turned in their access badges, exited the Pentagon, rather than agree to the reporting new guidelines. Absolutely. Dozens of journalists turned in their access badges, exited the Pentagon on Wednesday, rather than agree with these new, what they believe are draconian rules and restrictions on what they can report and what they can cover regarding American military and the use of military on US soil, actually. And Trump has been involved in some recent court cases against the New York Times, CBS News, ABC News, The Wall Street Journal, and Associated Press. Variety, the Variety magazine, only one outlet has agreed to Pentagon's new press rules, as Fox News and CNN are trying to comply. The list, when I think about activists, right, we need activists on the ground that are media activists, we need community activists, but this list of journalists who are activists and refuse to sign to comply to these rules include Associated Press, The Atlantic, Aviation Week, I thought that was hysterical, but it's really needed, Bloomberg News, Breaking Defense, CBS News, CNN, Defense Daily, which is a military publication, and they're refusing to sign this. Defense One, The Economist, and Federal Times are among the foundation of the journalist organizations. The Guardian, the Financial Times, NPR, PBS NewsHour, Reuters, and the Washington Post. There's a full list on the website, but you should definitely check out how journalists are fighting against censorship. It's really important to support them and to look at what's being done and where they need help. So with that being said, I'd love to turn to Kim Schneider's clip, The Librarians.
I'm doing a criminal investigation into some of your staff. Essentially, the librarians are my suspects.
Have you a real love of people, books, and learning? You may well consider the vocation of a librarian.
It didn't dawn on us that we would come under attack.
The word I have on my heart is repentance. We have librarians who are misunderstanding what is healthy and good for children.
When I was first attacked, a student's mother was calling me a pornographer, pedophile, and groomer of children.
Miss, do not interrupt my time.
That was my office. These are 2 books that I was asked to be removed, and I would not remove them.
We're gonna pull books off the shelves. Stamp, color purple.
Yep, there's your nudity right there.
Get rid of them. Get rid of them. This book was banned.
I would like to know how the history of the KKK is pornographic.
We have a movement within America that has decided that school boards are now where they want to push their agenda.
This stuff is coming into your schools, and it's probably already there.
Part of the ethics of our profession to support the First Amendment and fight censorship.
I've had former students reach out to me that have told me books have saved them. I'm going to speak out about it.
This is not a communist nation. You do not get to pick our reading material. It is ours.
You're trying to arrest librarians.
I do not understand.
You're a fascist. You're a fascist.
I cannot imagine my face on the wanted poster and my friends being taken away in handcuffs.
You're coming for teachers and librarians, and they know it.
This is a spiritual war.
Our goal is to spread this to other communities.
This is about taking away rights.
I'm here today to implore you to listen to librarians.
What is going on?
This can't be America. No, this can't be America.
Absolutely. Kim's not here, but I just want to give a couple of stats. In 2024 to 2025, the school year, PEN America recorded 6,870 instances of book banning over nearly 4,000 unique titles. For the 3rd straight year, Florida was #1 in book banning in America, followed by Texas, #2, and then on to Tennessee. This is according to the PEN America's recent study. And some of the books include Wicked, Solid, Orson Welles, 1984. I'm like, what year is that? And if you look at the list, it is mind-blowing what books have been banned. Love to get the impression from the panel when we look at book banning, when we look at controlling journalists, when we look at controlling content and eliminating PBS. What do you see as ways forward, to move forward? You want to start, Melissa?
Well, I'm still wondering why I was asked to be here on the panel. Maybe for that. But I was brought up in part by Dee Dee Halleck. And I was on her first show, Paper Tiger Television, when cable opened up public access. And she dove in and got a spot and a place to transmit from. And a crazy, wonderful bunch of people that came together and did the first Paper Tiger Television shows that eventually grew into Deep Dish, by my understanding. I couldn't have white grapes when I was growing up in New York City because my mother was boycotting them. I couldn't have iceberg lettuce because my mother was boycotting it. And that's how I grew up, and I realized sitting here on the panel that I have kind of taken that upbringing into my work. I don't make the product. I don't choose the product. I don't choose the subject matter. I don't choose how it's done. All I can do is take the work that's given to me, the work that I land one way or another, and try and show portraits of women that I can believe are living, real human beings. And make it a purpose for myself at this point in my career to do that. I have a great deal of shame around the very fancy golden prize that I never asked for and ended up sitting on a shelf at home, my Oscar for The Fighter, in which I play a woman who has got to be at least 20 years older than I actually am, given the 9 children that she had brought up in northern Massachusetts, based on a real woman. I begged the filmmaker to hire an appropriate woman to play the part, and eventually sort of strong-armed into playing Alice Ward for David O. Russell. And, you know, so I see that part of it, and that's what I do. Every step I take forward, I hope that my mother will be proud of me, and that she'll understand I learned the lesson of not getting those white grapes that I so wanted.
The other panelists, do you want to address the question of what are steps forward, what are ways forward?
So I think I shared earlier, I'm from Brazil, and when I, was born in my childhood, Brazil was under a dictatorship. And I think that there is a lot of lessons and important ways that as a society we should learn from other countries that have gone through. Hopefully it's not going to get to that point. I think we are still fairly early in the US, in the sort of like, downhill to full-on totalitarianism. But I was surprised, I have to say, when everybody, I saw a lot of people around me very scared that authoritarianism was completely going to take hold in America once Trump won the election. And I was very skeptical because I felt that because the United States has had such a strong and lengthy tradition of democracy, that there was enough of an institutional foundation that was going to prevent things from getting that bad. It's different than Brazil, where it's, we became a democracy in '89, right? We had like 40 years of dictatorship. So when Bolsonaro came to power, I thought the chances that we were going to slide back to dictatorship were quite high. But when people were afraid of that happening in the US, I was like, there's no way. Like, this is a very strong, solid place with a lot of institutional. And then I saw how quickly institutions just gave in for no reason. I mean, I want to go back to the campuses, the universities, Columbia University, where I went to school. I just couldn't believe how quickly and unnecessarily, given the wealth. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, part of it is because we have not been a real democracy for a very, so yeah, that's that's why. And in fact, these moments of, again, they always say, Black people, you're all talking about history, blah, 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 but that's what, we have to know our history because it's how we understand the present. Kids have been being taken away from their parents since the beginning of this country. As I said, censoring stories has been from the beginning, right? So when we see the slit, how quickly they fail, some of us were like, yeah, this is this country, this is this country. But in terms of how to move forward and models, I do think that Just Vision is a really instructive for us of alternative ways of funding and distributing our work. One of the most, as you said, censored stories has been Israel and Palestine. It was through, from public media, on, commercial, all of it. And Just Vision has created this way of telling these stories and getting them out there. And that's the kind of vision I think that we have to have as filmmakers. And you know, the story, and Boycott is such an amazing film, you know, but people didn't know that this was, I think when you first told me about this film and what you were doing, I was like, huh? There's laws that you can't boycott again? I mean, people don't have the information. And so, you know, the way forward is like we have to find alternative models of getting the information out there. Like there's no choice, and I think people want it. I think people want it. Don't you see that as a filmmaker with bringing our stories to festivals, to places, to the impact that we do? You know, as filmmakers, they're hungry for it, and we have to, you know, we have to always know that, in spite of the forces that are trying to stop it.
Absolutely. Well, when you were speaking before, I just kept on thinking again, going back to my time in South Africa, you know, in the United States, you know, Paper Tiger and Deep Dish, you know, what I loved about those two organizations and the founder and what she did was they're outrageous in their thinking. We're gonna use capitalism, we're gonna buy satellite time and distribute the programming via public access stations across the country. And as I said, Dee Dee Halleck is the founder, she lives in Woodstock, and for me, it's like the audacity of regular people saying, fuck you, we're gonna do it our way. We're gonna figure out a way to get the programming done, right? When I think about Danny Schechter, for anyone who knows Danny Schechter, when I was traveling in South Africa, people would say to me, do you know Danny Schechter? And I thought, my God, this is such a crazy thing. Yes, I do, but it's like you going to another country and they randomly ask you about somebody who's in the media, and they said, South Africa Now, the series that he had on PBS, got so many donations, so much stuff done for South Africa for a 10-year period. And if you looked at stats, the people who watched South Africa Now was a very small percentage of the PBS audience, but it was the percentage that was needed to make real change.
And it's also how I started in journalism in high school, doing transcripts for South Africa Now. And that's how, and going to Danny Schechter, be like, what can I do? Like, what can I do? So that's it, the ripple effect, you know, is so important. And I see that with young people, with the young people I teach, it's, you know, the ripple effect is really powerful.
Absolutely. And taking time, I come from a family that, you know, one of the founders of the Young Lords is my cousin, and my mom was a grassroots activist, etc. And I remember, and for some of you who know me, I've said the story before, that my mom took me to the ERA rights march in the 70s. And I remember just being a little kid and saying, change is happening, Mommy, change is happening right now, change is happening. And she said, sweetheart, no, change is not happening, sweetheart. I brought you here, I want you to see the movement of people. The movement of the movement is what we're looking at, my love. She said, get excited, but not too excited, because it's gonna take a really long time to get the ERA passed in this country. And when I was doing a commencement speech, I went to Hunter College, I did a commencement speech, and they asked me to do it via Zoom during the pandemic. And I was just like, how can I motivate folks when we're locked down and talk to them about what's possible? And I remember, and I used Pitbull, the songs of Pitbull, as part of my activation in my living room. But the other thing was the story of, as activists, we have to look at the long game and think of, you know, in the 70s, I did witness this huge movement, but look, we're in 2025, and it still has not passed, right? So looking at the long tail of this, and also thinking about, well, how should our young activists be trained? How should our journalists be trained? How should our filmmakers, our actors be trained? Question for you in the business that you're in, the very specific entertainment business. how do you think the new actress, the next generation, what needs to change so that there's more access even to the industry than there is now?
Access to the industry, I have no idea. I think that it's what I have seen most of my life. I grew up in New York City, and I've spent most of my time in my life on the East Coast here, and maybe it's the environment in which I was brought up, but I have always seen us going more, and I see it more and more clearly the older I get. We are so going backwards, and I look at what a female actor is supposed to appear like, and it has nothing to do with what my experience of being a female, a girl, a woman is. It's not lipstick and push-up bras, and that seems to become more and more and more what the requirement is for young actors. There was a day when I first started, there's a wonderful documentary about Bonnie Timmerman, the casting director. She was looking for actors that would fill the roles. And she found amazing actors. They are not the prettiest of the actors out there, male or female, but they're rock solid actors. And something that an actor does, acting is an ancient art, filmmaking is an infant, and acting is an ancient healing art. In Greece, and Epidaurus, what is known as the first theater. Epidaurus was in fact a hospital, think spa, for wealthy Athenians to go to, have water therapies, talking therapies, and to watch the actors perform in dramas so they could know how better to live their lives. The ancient art of acting is about bettering humanity. And as long as we keep signing up, we as actors keep signing up for the kind of bullshit that the man wants to put out there, it's just going to get worse. And that's what's happening.
So I just have a hard time seeing out, so I apologize for that. So I can't really see faces, but we want to turn it to Q&A so that folks have access to asking these ladies. Yes?
Yeah. I'm not supposed to do this, but
I'm not supposed to step out of character here, but I can relate with each and every story. I've been to South Africa pre and post-apartheid. I've researched slave owners in Kingston. I remember growing up without iceberg lettuce, etc. And thanks to the Woodstock Film Festival, I've actually seen The Librarians, and if you haven't seen it, do not miss it. So this is an uphill battle, clearly, and it takes a lot of organization and effort, etc. And I don't want to be the one to raise the boogeyman, per se, but I'm struggling with artificial intelligence and how that is compounding the challenge that we all have. And I'm just wondering if anybody had any thoughts on that.
Well, I'll just start really quickly. So NIWIFT, we received money from the National Science Foundation. I applied to a grant. We did get money to do work to unite filmmakers and high-level scientists, STEM people, right? So we did a first summit and went really well, and our second summit, which was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, was an all-day AI summit, and it was like Columbia, NYU, just various universities, and what the research was saying about AI. And then we had practitioners talking about AI and engineers. And then we had filmmakers talking about how they're using AI. And what I came away with, I called it a day of learning with all of these specialists. What I came away with is AI is already here. AI is functioning, right? At a very high level that we don't understand. And when I say we don't understand, I mean me, right? I was dealing with the payroll issue, and I kept on responding to these emails, and then I realized maybe that's not a real person. Maybe I'm talking to it. So I had to write and say, are you a real person? If you are not, I want to speak to a real person. So I do think that there are challenges with AI, but I also think from what I learned in the seminar, that there are real creative filmmakers that are using it not to, what's that called, replace actors, not to, I have to say, do things that will cause creative people to lose jobs. Not for that, but for some interesting creative opportunities. But the issue that I have and what I learned is the policy issues, the environmental issues, and the electrical grid issues are stuff we don't really understand the magnitude of impact. So I would just say on that side, we need more education.
Boycott AI.
My question was how it is being used and can be used to counter the work that you people are doing. That is what scares me.
I think misinformation is a real big danger of AI. There's the amount of stuff that is circulating online that is completely fake, and that can be quite hard to tell from truth right now. So I do worry about this world in which we can no longer tell at all what's truth and what's reality in a context in which there are many people already trying to do that to us, right? So that's my biggest fear. I did hear, and again, I'm not an expert on AI, but I was very pleased that they are learning that AI is not actually going to continue to get exponentially more capable and intelligent, that there was increasingly all the research is showing they are slowing down the degree to which they're getting brighter and smarter. And that was a huge relief to me, because I was really concerned around where this is gonna go, how far. I think that if it stays around where we are, I think there are ways, we need to drastically increase media literacy, and we're gonna have to have a lot of tools at our disposal that learn to identify AI, right? So in some ways, we're gonna have to have the AI to identify the AI. But it seems to me that there are ways of getting to a place where we do have those tools, so long as the capabilities of AI don't exponentially increase in the next 5 to 10 years.
Anyone else? Let's switch up. Yeah?
Me?
Yes.
Okay. I was just, thank you so much. Linda, you mentioned that you've been working with Just Films for about 20 years, and I've seen you have quite a film.
Just Vision.
Just Vision. Oh, I thought it was called Just Films.
Just Films is the Ford Foundation that copied our name.
Oh! Wow, thank you for setting me straight. I looked that up. Just Vision. Okay, but does Just Vision have some site where the films that have been produced by you and others are accessible?
Yes, so the films are generally, they are distributed first in film festivals, then we do try to do as many sales to broadcasters as we can. One of our films, Nyland Uprising, was on PBS, and others have been on other broadcasters, and then we do go online on TVOD, on transactional video on demand. But since October 7 and after the onslaught and genocide in Gaza, we actually made all of our films available for free on our website. So justvision.org is the website, and you should be able to access. I believe they are all still, they were definitely on until recently, and I believe they still are. Otherwise, they are on Google Play, Apple TV, and Amazon Prime TVOD, not the subscription.
And also, I'm just wondering, last night the house was full for a film called Coexistence, My Ass. Have you seen that?
Yes, I love the film.
Great, everyone loved it. I mean, it's really gutsy for people who don't know, an Israeli woman, but who's trilingual. She grew up in the Arab Jewish community of Neve Shalom. And so she's learned, I mean, it's just fabulous to see how she decided she's an activist, but she also wants to use humor to get people to listen, to get Palestinians to understand her point of view. So I'm so glad you saw that.
Yeah, and in fact, they are opening theatrically 1 week or 2 weeks in New York City for those who are there, and maybe there are other places as well that I don't know about, but I highly recommend the film.
Also, Secret Agent the other night.
Yes.
I'm sure you've heard from your family, but you
Yes.
get a sense of Brazil in that time period.
There's another film, if you like that film, it was done many, many years ago, but it's called New Muslim Cool. And you should see that. It's a fun, upbeat film. And the central character is a Puerto Rican Muslim who went to Catholic school. And it's real life. It's called New Muslim Cool. You should check it out. But questions, we have another 9 minutes. I know you have questions, come on.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Okay.
I've got a question about distribution because, you know, it's the conglomeration of media through these, I think at this point, maybe 6 families that are controlling all forms of media in America is so shocking. And we've seen what happened with Jimmy Kimmel, et cetera, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about genuine independent distribution, because even if you're putting, you know, a pay-per-view direct-to-video on Apple, you're still within that conglomeration. And what is the conversation around genuine independent distribution, like there's genuine independent radio? How can we find our own way to telling the truth?
So there has been several different attempts at like having independent streamers. And one of the challenges with that is obviously because then you're trying to get the audiences to you, and increasingly that's not how people behave, right? They want to find wherever they are. And one advantage of the TVOD system is that theoretically there are enough out there, and currently for the upload process there isn't yet that much of a censorship editorially. Like we could end up in a place where there is, but it's a bit of an easier route. And I'll give an example of a film that many of you might have heard of or know of, No Other Land. So No Other Land won Best Documentary last year at the Oscars, and that film was one of the most, you know, hailed and loved, rightfully so, documentary films of all times, and couldn't get any of the top commercial distributors to pick it up. They did do a theatrical independently, and they made like $2.5 million in the box office. And just actually on Monday, this Monday, October 20th, it's going to be available again on all the TVOD channels. So that's a way of circumventing the sort of traditional curatorial decisions of the big platforms and reaching audiences directly. One film that did that is called Israelism. I don't know who has seen it. Again, highly recommend. All these films I'm mentioning, I think they are very valuable and useful. And Israelism did that route and did tremendously well, like actually financially was very, very successful. And that's because they were very savvy in how they use social media, which is something that, you know, I think we increasingly are gonna have to learn how to do better. It has many, obviously, negative sides, but it is a way that increasingly is how people are getting their information from. And I will say, you know, we discussed like how do we train, you know, young people. I want to be trained by the young people. Yeah. I actually, I feel like I have a lot to learn myself. And the Israelism team in particular, the company is not a company, it's an organization. It's called Tikkun Olam. And they are, you know, at least 10 years younger than I am. And they knew how to do things in a way that we all need to learn. So I'm actually interested in learning from the young people myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have so much to learn, I can't even tell you. I couldn't figure out the GPS here. If my daughter was in the car, I would have been here on time, okay? So, for sure.
I want to speak to a film that's here, Ask E.
Jean, that has been censored.
What's the name?
Ask E. Jean, about E. Jean Carroll. They cannot find distribution. Yeah, and many people who gave money to the film asked that their names not be on the film. So if you're talking about censorship in a really high-profile way, would something like your method of uploading to a video on demand be something that they could do to push their film? Because they want it seen by people in the Midwest who have no idea that Trump has been, indicted and adjudicated as a rapist. And all of that is very important information that we need to disseminate. So how do we break that kind of censorship block when it's, Sheila Nevins is the executive producer, and she can't find distribution for the film. So.
That is a question, I'm not sure any of us can really answer, because it goes back to what Europa was saying. It's like, we've been facing censorship, since the very beginning of time in terms of our stories. And these types of films, I think it will get harder and harder, but there is a group, I have to say, there are 2 ad hoc groups, so I can't give you the specific URL because they don't have websites up yet. But there are 2 groups that are working very diligently to think about how, as PBS, public television, is changing and the current demise of what used to be the system, what are ways in which to get the material out via social media, via YouTube, via different LinkedIn, via, to tell different parts of a story, whether you have to go through certain channels to see the whole platform, if you will. And so to me, that's interesting, because I don't think that I'm more of an old traditionalist. I want to go to the movies and see a full film. I don't like, what's that called, pecking and hunting to get my information. But I think there are some young people that are thinking creatively about how to do that. Over here. Mm-hmm.
I had a question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you had a question. Sorry. I can't see well.
Yes, okay. Hi. I have 2 questions, actually. So first, I wanted to know, what is the biggest lesson you've learned during this censorship, this change in telling your story? And 2, are you seeing where the gaps are empty now? Are they being filled by other supporters? That's what I wanted to know.
In terms of funding?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is gonna go back a little bit too, and I'm sorry that I keep talking about justification, but we had to forego any government funding 10 years ago. So we used to actually get money through USAID for some of our programs. And it actually became clear that it was a liability working particularly with Palestinian communities, given what the Israeli government was otherwise funding and supporting. So it didn't make sense to be like, on the one hand, you're bombing the Palestinian people, and on the other hand, you're giving some money to help feed them. And so we decided to completely let go of that. And also, because we have never been dependent on commercial distributors, and we have also never taken investment money, a lot of the ups and downs of the industry and how that, there's been like the Golden Age of documentary, and then it crashes, and then there's another Golden Age. We've been through that, all of that over the past 22 years, but we have been able to remain stable because we have sort of 400 individual and institutional donors that support us year after year, and that have many of them stayed with us for 22 years. And so that the end of government funding has not affected us. The end of investors who thought they were going to make tons of money by, getting sales to Netflix and etc. That has ended, and that also has not affected us. So in that way, we have built a model to be resilient through all of this, because the topic that we talk about has always faced what now everybody else is facing.
I'm being pushed for time, and so there's 2 ladies that are really they've got their eyes on me. So, but I'm gonna ignore them for a couple of minutes, just humor us. Just question quick and answer quick.
Okay, I don't have a question, I have the editor and the story. For you.
Huh?
Did you see the shirt that she
We have to be quick.
I'm sorry, wow. I just wanted to say I'm the editor and story producer of Ask Eugene, and I just want to tell you that it is true that we are, first of all, it just premiered like a month ago, so there's still time. But if it doesn't happen, I'm here to guarantee that there will be a creative way that you got one of the...
Camera purposes. Thank you for that clarification. Well, thank you so much. It's 3 o'clock on the nose. I've done my job. What I'm going to do, because we have, I have quite a bit of research, and I had many more questions to ask these ladies, is that we will send a follow-up email with information. And Melissa, I'm sorry, you wanted to do some closing comment?
No, I had no closing. Did somebody tell you that?
I have a closing comment.
You see how the rumors get spread and one thing and another?
I have a closing comment. How can we take over public access again? How can we can we do that again?
Yes.
How can we?
It's what strikes me the most of all of it, and maybe I'm just too naive, and I'm okay with that. I'd be happy to be naive and keep my head in the sand, but maybe what we think of as success can shift.
Thank you.
Do you really need an Academy Award nomination to say you made a really good film that can make a difference? Maybe you could make a film and take it around to the public libraries and show it there.
And to on campuses and engagement, a big part, we haven't talked about the engagement work that we do. Yes, as filmmakers. And so that is one of the ways we're getting the films to people. We're bringing it to people. We're bringing it to universities. And again, the ripple effect, it may not be the Netflix audience, but you'll be surprised. There are people, I've seen that. I was at that screening. And that's really powerful work that we continue to do. And that's really important.
Absolutely. And the last thing that I would say about this topic exactly is we just need to look, right? Public access, public libraries, public parks. When I was commissioner, one of the first things that I did was show me where the poor parks are that don't have screens. And what we did was we bought mobile units for each borough and made sure to bring the mobile unit to those parks to show interesting films. And then in the winter, we use those same mobile units to go to senior citizens' homes to then show films that were for senior citizens. And my whole thing with buying these 5 vans was like, we need to bring the material that is most innovative to these folks. We don't need to be showing them Disney movies, okay? We need to be showing them really fascinating films that these folks have been part of and are making. So I want to thank you so much. It's 3:02. Thank you, thank you, thank you.